Welcome to the Reflections Cast, where we invite you to join us in an exploration of the teachings of our dad, Skip Ross. In each episode, we will listen to a talk or lecture from Skip, and then discuss what we might be able to apply to our daily lives and reflect on how they can inspire us to grow and change. We hope to continue his legacy and join our listeners in finding new insights and perspectives. Here's episode 15, Dogged Determination. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Steve.
And I'm Melody.
And this is an excellent episode. We're going to be delving into, we're developing a plan for accomplishing. And this particular episode, we are getting into how to develop dogged determination to follow through. And the last couple episodes, we've been hitting some really great points. So I just wanted to summarize them real quick. A few episodes ago, we started with crystallize your thinking, define it clearly and specifically, then write it down. And then we are finally into developing a plan for accomplishing. And in that message, we've covered identifying and writing a list of those potential obstacles and then prioritizing the potential solutions and being proactive in overcoming those challenges. And it's just been awesome. So if you like that kind of discussion, stay tuned, get subscribed, because we've got a lot more to talk about. But before we get into all that, I just wanted to invite you all to please give us some feedback. If you enjoyed the podcast, or maybe if you were confused by the podcast, or maybe if you just want to let other people know about the podcast, then send us some feedback. Give us a review on whatever podcast feed you're listening to us on, or send us an email at thereflectionscast@gmail.com. Leave us a comment on our YouTube channel, or you can even send us a voicemail if you'd like to be featured on the podcast. You can send us a voicemail on our Spotify page. So we'd love to hear from you guys. We love to hear that you guys are enjoying this time with us. I've heard it in person a number of times that you guys are really enjoying the podcast, and I really do appreciate that. But if you guys would also have any questions or want to steer the direction of the podcast and the subjects that we're talking about, please send us that feedback, because we would love to hear it. And speaking of something that I would love to hear, Melody, can you tell us about that Pioneer Circle again? Because I love hearing about it.
I would love to tell you about the Pioneer Circle. The Pioneer Circle is our community of families who are working together to resource the pioneers of the future. And we are resourcing these 8 to 18-year-old kids with coaching, with encouragement, with teaching, with training, with an app, with weekly videos, with monthly coaching calls, all sorts of things to really connect with these kids, build a community, and build their leadership, build their strength, build their self-confidence. So it's really a really fun project, and we would love to have you or your family be a part of it. I do want to mention something specific this week that is new. So for a long time, we have had a Circle A Facebook group, and not a Circle A Facebook like public page, but just an actual group where we will, post our pictures from our camp sessions and things of that nature. But we've actually never had a Circle A social media. And so because of the traction and growth that we are having, both with our Circle A Summit and with our Pioneer Circle and with the Reflections podcast, we are really going all in on kind of rebuilding the Circle A community and looking at how we can most particularly help and resource this next generation of leaders. And so because of that, we are launching some new social media. And so we would love for you guys to follow all of our new social media. We're on Facebook as Circle A. We are on Instagram as Circle A Insta, and we are also on Threads. So we will put our links in the show notes for you guys so that you can go ahead and give us a follow. But we are really ramping up to be putting out some great content on our social media for families and for our pioneers, our 8 to 18-year-olds. So we will continue to be growing with that and kind of adapting to the the spaces where these kids most are at, but we're starting with these 3 for now. So we would love your feedback, your ideas, and definitely your engagement on all these new social media channels.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I have a lot of profiles that I need to subscribe to. I don't even have an Insta account, so I need to get on that.
Yeah, I had to get back on it too. Yeah. I'm going to be honest.
But I love seeing more content that just keeps us in that right mindset. There's so much stuff out there. And guys, Pioneer Circle is the right kind of stuff you want coming into your feed. So check it out. All right. And now it is time that we delve into that number 3 of these 3 steps for developing a plan of accomplishing. And that is developing a dogged determination to follow through. So here's Skip.
And then in developing a plan for accomplishing, the third part of it is to develop a dogged determination to follow through. Follow through. Just determined to follow through with a concentration on the results. There are far too many people who concentrate at the wrong area of results. By that, I simply mean there are people who will begin a task, and because they don't start with the end in mind, as we've been taught by so many experts in the field, because they don't start with the end in mind, their results are momentary, and they will work real hard, and then they'll stop to look around to see how it's working out. That loses momentum in anything you're doing. I'm particularly familiar with it from our business because I see people do it constantly. Constantly, in spite of what we tell them, in spite of what we encourage, in spite of what we teach. It's a, how am I doing? How am I doing? And when the how am I doing doesn't get the answer they were looking for, when it doesn't match the results they think they ought to have, they then begin to do less. So the determination to just follow through, regardless of the momentary result, is what this plan of action needs to be all about. A plan well thought out, a plan well documented in terms of potential problems, but more well documented in terms of the solutions to any situation that comes up. Oftentimes, I never have to use all of the solutions that I have in mind. But I'm always glad that they're there because it gives me options. It gives me different directions to go. Not long ago, and one of the potential obstacles to this whole program when we began is that we did not have a degree of financial independence that we do today. We were beginning, but when they told us the price for this place, I said that's too much. Now he's speaking through an intermediary to Jay Van Andel. I'm not sure I would have said it straight to Jay's face, but I was okay with saying it to his real estate agent, who was a good friend of ours, by the name of Walt Bass. And so I was willing to say to Walt, that's too much. And he said, well, that's what Jay says it's worth, and that's his bottom line. So if you don't want to pay that, you don't want to pay that. But I'm telling you, that's the bottom line. Now, again, my solution to many things in terms of laying out a plan is the recognition that I've been given, as I believe each person has, a measure of faith that I am capable of using. And my approach to Walt was simply, he said, if you don't want to pay that much, what's your offer? And I said, here's the offer. He said, he'll never take it. I said, Walt, I believe he will, because I believe this is the place. And I believe that when you tell him the offer, he will say, sell it to him, which is exactly what Walt did and exactly what Jay said, those very words. Walt was rather impressed. Can I be honest with you? So was I. But again, it showed me, and the reason I started out on this is that I knew what it was like to go to a bank to try to get a loan, and I'd never been able to do that. Before we moved here and bought this place, I had never had a bank loan me money. Because generally they checked my checking account when I'd go in to borrow money, and their response to me was always the same: Mr. Ross, we can't loan you money. And I would ask why, and they would say, because you don't have any. And I would say, I know I don't have any, that's why I'm trying to borrow some from you. But you don't have enough asset there for us to justify loaning to you, so I never had a loan until we bought this place. It's quite amazing when you stop to think about it. We had worked hard to accumulate some money for down payment, and we had put money aside, and we had sacrificed, and all the things that were a part of that plan to be able to buy and to build this particular program. We had done that, but there was nothing that was going to stop us. There was no obstacle that was big enough to stop us. We just didn't see them as obstacles. And I think maybe that's more of what I feel when I start talking about list the obstacles, potential obstacles, and list the solutions. I feel more that when you are totally committed to the goal, you just don't see they don't appear as obstacles. They appear as the next challenge, the next step, the next thing that you're going to solve, but it's not a problem. Though most people looking at it would say, you got a problem.
All right. Well, there is another awesome teaching from Skip. I know that one ended a little too soon, but that's what we've got for this episode. So you'll just have to come back again next time for more. But, just thinking about a quick summary of what he shared today, he's talking about this dogged determination, this determination to follow through on the goal, even when you hit roadblocks that sort of feel insurmountable. And so, he warns us about getting caught up in short-term results and, kind of doing a little bit of effort and then looking up and feeling like it hasn't gotten us where we expected ourselves to be, and then feeling like that effort wasn't worth it. And then, kind of just getting stuck in that cycle. And he reminds us to keep focusing on the end goal, to not let up on the effort, to keep that dogged determination going. And he certainly, talks about some of his personal experiences in business to kind of illustrate, that happens in our business a lot of times. I think it certainly happens in weight loss a lot of times. So it's affirming to know that it is a normal thing. People do it, but he gives us some options to do it differently. And I love that. He emphasizes, kind of just staying committed and persevering regardless of those immediate outcomes. And he definitely reminds us again of that comprehensive planning process that we talked about in the last episode. That's just so important. He shares this personal story about negotiating the price of the Circle A property, just to kind of, underscore that power of belief and faith and determination in one's goals. And man, that story is another really good one for me to hear because, for me, I'm just kind of a rule follower and I'm not a negotiator. And so if somebody tells me a thing, I kind of am just like, okay, well, that's the way it is. That's the price it is. That's the rules that I'm playing by. And so, that's the box that I need to fit in. And the more I think about it, the more I realize how good mom and dad were about not just agreeing to those boxes immediately, but about that dogged determination for what they were pursuing. So he tells us that when we're genuinely committed to a goal, the obstacles that we face are viewed as challenges we're going to solve rather than insurmountable problems. And, I think that attitude is just absolutely vital to, the success and significance that we're talking about with this sort of goal setting. So another great teaching from Skip. I loved it. Mm-hmm. What about you? Do you have any thoughts, Stephen?
I do have tons of thoughts. I put a lot of my thoughts into the questions, but I guess things that I didn't really put into my questions, but that I always think about in this particular discussion point of this dogged determination and shutting out what the world wants to show you about your goals and instead having a vision and knowing how you want to get it accomplished, regardless of what other people say is possible. I always think of people like Walt Disney. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are other people that come up for some, but Walt Disney is someone who I know a lot of the history of and the struggles of even something like building Disneyland, where everyone came to him and said, well, that's completely impossible. That's absolutely impractical. People he loved came to him and said, why would you ever want to put your money into something like this? Mm-hmm. But he had a vision, and it didn't matter how many obstacles came. He saw them not as a roadblock in any way, just an obstacle or a challenge to figure out a solution to. And so I think that mom and dad's view towards the camp is the exact same way of they never said, well, I guess we just won't do it then. They just kept modifying and dodging and weaving and coming up with great solutions to what seemed to be insurmountable problems. So yeah, it's a great topic of discussion. It's something that I think also develops a lot of good questions. So I've got a couple of questions I can get into here with you if you're ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So question number 1 is to clarify his point at the beginning of this segment. He talks about the need to stay committed and to push forward regardless of those immediate outcomes. And he gives the example of someone becoming demotivated because they didn't have that end goal in mind. So the question is, how do you not get demotivated if the results that you're seeing from your actions are just not getting you towards the results that you were hoping for? And I guess further into that is when he's talking about this dogged determination, is it really asking us to like stick our heads in the sand and just shut everything out and say, I don't care how it looks around me. I know where I'm going and I'm going to stick to my plan. Is that what it is, or is there some more nuance to it?
Yeah.
Is there something more we could bring to it?
Oh yeah.
And I have further questions into that, but I think, I don't know.
No, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I think there's a lot of nuance to it. And I think that he actually kind of already gave us some of the groundwork of this nuance with the beginning teachings in this series, because he was talking about ultimate goal and purpose. And so, I mean, to me, when we're talking about beginning with the end in mind, the end, I think that we have to keep in mind, is bigger than any one goal. The end is that kind of ultimate goal of like the person that you're becoming, right? And so like for me, I'll use me. I'm not going to be motivated at this point in my life about any goal that isn't moving me towards that end goal of the person that I'm becoming, right? And so if I'm keeping my mind on that thing, then even if there's downright failure in the goal that I'm pursuing, I know that it's still moving me towards that actual end goal, right? And even if I'm not seeing the results I want in the short term towards a specific goal that I'm working on, I'll know that just the actions of working towards that goal are still helping me become the person that I want to become. And so there's still victory in it, even if I'm not seeing the results I want in the moment. Now, is that always enough to keep me motivated? No, but it does help a lot. It really does help a lot when you can kind of zoom out from a specific goal and look at the person that you're becoming and, the body of work that you're putting into the world. And I mean, I can share a personal example that is very current, I would say, and relatable to our audience, in this work with Circle A and this effort that we are making to sort of relaunch, revitalize a community, rebrand, reimagine who we are and what we're doing in the world. Not that we're really changing the mission of Circle A. We're not, but we are engaging with an entirely new generation of people at this point. And so the work of that is many faceted, right? We've got the Pioneer Circle going. We've got the Reflections podcast going. We've got our summits, which we are going to be having in the summer, which is our family camp. We've got our social media that we're starting up. We've got these weekly emails that we are allowing people to subscribe to. And in the midst of all that, I'm also in the process of writing a book that's going to essentially be a translation of Dad's work to a new generation. And so in all of that, that's a lot. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of goals. Each of those things, we have specific goals. We have specific goals for how many people we want at the summit. We have specific goals for how many families we want in the Pioneer Circle. I don't have a specific goal for how many books I want to sell yet, but I will by the time I publish it because I know how important goal setting is. However, I can also tell you, right now, the engagement isn't what I would love it to be. We're not failing. We are growing. It's awesome, but it's slow. It's a slow trickle. And so I could be discouraged. And you could too. I'm speaking for myself, but we could be discouraged if this growth isn't as quick as we'd like to see it. But for me, I have to keep myself in this place of awareness of who I am and who I'm becoming, and the belief that, I'm doing these things because I believe that God put them in me to do. And I'm doing these things because I genuinely believe that this community matters and it will make a difference in the lives of an entire generation of kids. And I'm committed to seeing these projects through, even if they don't take off and expand like I hope and pray that they will, because I'm not doing them in order to achieve a measure of success. I'm doing them because I believe this is the person that I'm created to be in this season. And what God does with them is up to him. And so I think in one sense, I'm maybe sticking my head in the sand and choosing not to be discouraged if there's, part of the work that has slow numbers and, we only have less than 100 Instagram followers right now or whatever. At some point I do have to stick my head in the sand and just not care about that and just keep doing the work and believing that the audience will grow. But in another sense, and this is, I think, important, in another sense, I'm not sticking my head in the sand because I am paying attention to what is working and what is connecting with people so that we can adapt and so that we can meet needs and communicate in effective ways with people. And so, in that sense, I am paying very close attention and I'm learning and adapting and changing from the experience, both the good things and the not good things. And I think that that's really what he's talking about with this idea of dogged determination. Not that I'm saying I'm the grand example. I'm not. I have a lot of learning and growing still to do, but I'm saying I learned this from him in a sense. So beginning with the end in mind to me is not necessarily building some $1 million business or having a New York Times bestseller. It's the end is having a positive influence on the lives of kids. And so every day when I wake up to do that work, that's my end goal. And that's the work I'm doing, whether it's 10 kids or 100 kids or 1,000 kids or 100,000 kids, that's what keeps me motivated. So I don't think it's sticking your head in the sand, but I do think it's a dogged determination towards that ultimate goal that can really keep you moving when you're not getting the results that you're hoping for.
Awesome. I love the mentality. And I think that it's so important because so often, especially when you're dealing with the specific numbers of things, it can be in your face constantly. Oh, well, you're not meeting your expectations. So I guess that means you're a failure. But no, you've got the end in mind. You've got that end point that is so much bigger and so much more worthy of continuing the process for. how can that not keep you motivated? And honestly, we've been doing stuff on the internet for a long time, and I've never gotten like the numbers that I've put down as my goals for anything that we've ever done. But for me, it's never been demotivating, because no matter what, there's always been at least one new person.
Yep.
At any time I check anything, there's always one new person. And just the idea that, okay, that was someone who was reaching out into the void of the internet to find some hope, some positivity, somebody out there that's talking about the topics that we are putting out into the world, and they connected with us so much so that they wanted to subscribe and get more. And just that one makes it all worthwhile. And so I think like there's those things that you can get stuck into if you're focusing on the nitty gritty of it. But at the end of the day, if the bigger message is getting met, it feels good.
Yep.
So,
for sure.
All right. Anyway, on to question number 2. Another clarification that I was hoping that we could get into was when he says, my solution to many things in terms of laying out a plan is the recognition that I've been given, as I believe each person has, a measure of faith that I am capable of using. Is that faith that he's talking about a comment on his belief in a spiritual intervention on the results of his goals? Or is he talking about a faith in the outcome he wants and that influencing the possibility of it actually happening? Like, is it a manifestation faith thing, or is it a bigger concept in a spiritual sense?
Yep.
Because I know he uses that word a lot, and he even used it in the last teaching. And yeah, I just wanted some clarification on what it is that he's meaning when he says faith.
Yeah. That's a great question. That same quote stood out to me for sure, because you could tell the weight that he felt when he was saying it. Like, this is a serious thing. It's a serious thing. And I don't wield it, unwisely. And, I think it's both. Honestly, I think that when he talks about faith, that was one of the principles of success. And that was not necessarily a spiritual principle. There is, to him, everything was spiritual, and to me as well. But there is also a human principle of speaking things into the world and the belief that you have affecting your results. And so that was a principle that he taught regardless of anybody's spirituality, and a principle that he practiced in his life for sure. But I also think that, there were things that he felt very clearly that God had called him to do, and that he believed God would resource him to be able to do. And so, I think in this sense, in this particular story that he's mentioning, it wasn't just the faith of speaking something into the world. It was the faith of divine provision. I think that he was very wise about what was what. I don't think he, assumed that. I think he knew that God was bigger than his vision, and that God does things that we don't understand, and that God has plans that we cannot foresee. He knew that. And he also knew the times when he did feel the clear voice of God saying, I'm with you in this and I will provide. So I think it's both. And, I think for me, I feel like I have some growing to do in this, because I tend to be of the mindset that like God is in control. God is going to do what he's going to do. And I can't foresee what that is. And I think I miss out on a little bit of this power of faith that Dad is talking about here, because the truth is that, yes, God does do things that we don't understand. God does have plans that we cannot necessarily foresee. But I believe that, God gives us a lot of freedom in this world and a lot of potential. And he's given us the power of words for a reason. And so I do believe that there are things that we can speak into the world that if they are in alignment with the values, with the truth, with the light of God, then he's all for our faith in what we're trying to accomplish, whether it's, silly things like running a half marathon or learning a new instrument. Like those might not be something that the Lord spoke to me and said, this is what I have created you to do. But I think he absolutely celebrates those victories. So sorry to give a wishy-washy answer, but I do think it's both.
I agree. And I think that you covered it really well. So I don't think I need to touch that. I think that, I agree with you. And I think for someone who is listening to this that is uncomfortable with, a spiritual life connotation or meaning, then even if it is that faith of more of the human sense of believing in something with fervent, dogged determination, that is a valid point that he is making in this as well. So having both as an answer, I think makes a lot of sense. All right. So moving on then to question number 3. In changing this perspective on obstacles, can you recall a time when you faced what seemed like a major obstacle, but you were able to shift your perspective and view it as a manageable challenge? I think that, as a common example would be getting confronted with like a major health obstacle. Mm-hmm. That's what I just initially think of when I think of like some out of the blue, complete unknown thing that sends everything sideways.
Yep.
And maybe that's just my experience with health issues. But an example that jumps out to me would be going through the cancer diagnosis with Dad and how we as a family kind of responded to it. Mm-hmm. Going directly from hearing, okay, here's this major obstacle that's now here, to number 1 was prayer. Mm-hmm. And then number 2 was kind of all these steps of knowing the end goal, finding out what the obstacles are, defining our goals clearly and specifically about where it is that we want to get to, and protecting that mentality throughout. I think that was something that I think we helped Dad with a lot, was protecting his mindset as he was going into this, because, I think Mom did a tremendous amount of help in that area too, but it was just such a, I think difficult time is, I don't know if that's the right phrase, but it was a challenge. It was a real obstacle that I think that we experienced in many of the ways that he talks about in this lesson. And I don't think that we thought about it in the moment. I think that's just what we instinctively thought was the right thing to do. And it did lead to a positive outcome in many ways. So anyway, that's what I thought of when I was thinking about a manageable challenge. Is there any more that you want to put on this in terms of framing of how it relates to this topic? Or do you have other examples that you can think of?
Well, I mean, I think that's a great example because, like you said, it's one of those challenges that you could just rarely foresee or plan for, and nor should you. I mean, we should not spend our whole lives planning to be ill, because there's just in some of these circumstances, nothing that can be done to prevent it. And so, I think that this is a great example of this flexibility that we've talked about, this ability to pivot on a goal, but still move towards the ultimate goal. And I think that is what Dad did. And there was a lot of pivoting that happened. I mean, our whole lives, his whole life, Mom's whole life was just totally an upheaval from, their entire schedule to their entire work to selling the ranch to everything. And I I think that you're right. That's exactly what we did, is shift that perspective and view it as a manageable challenge. I mean, I don't even think there was a moment in this family where hope was lost, or, anybody thought it would be a good idea to just sort of give up on Dad's work in the world and just be sick. I don't think that really even occurred to any of us. Like, of course, Dad was going to learn from this experience and use it to help teach others. We knew that from the day of his diagnosis. I mean, I remember that being our first prayer as a family, or part of our first prayer, of course, and of course we prayed for healing, and we had that faith, and there was healing in a lot of ways. I mean, he went through this for multiple years in a stage 4 space. So that's, I think there were so many answered prayers in how it all played out for him. But yeah, the ultimate goal never went out of view, even for a moment. And, I remember some of the live streams that he did teaching about his experiences that were just so important for people who were going through similar experiences. I remember a speech that he did at one of our national conferences that was just maybe one of the best he's ever done. A speech that's going to stay with people forever. And it came from this experience. And even the very last video that he made, was a video that he made for our church. And it was essentially an invitation to Jesus. And, having that as like the last thing that he put into the world for public consumption, is so meaningful, and it will be meaningful for generations. So, this major obstacle was shifted into a manageable challenge, and he overcame it in every way that he could. And witnessing that journey, witnessing him just be so authentic with the struggle, because it was a struggle. I mean, he certainly faced the darkness in this, and he certainly faced, fear and despair, as any of us would in the face of a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. But he fought through it. And the ability to fight alongside him through that was very beautiful. The ability to just see how that was real for him, rather than him just, acting like everything was fine all the time, was so awesome, because I feel like it gave all of us who witnessed it permission, to be able to fight the same way if we ever have to face something like that. So yeah, I think that witnessing people who can turn even the darkest obstacles into something good and beautiful is just so formative, so beautiful, so inspiring. And so, I hope that us sharing just a few minutes of our perspective on it can be inspiring to our listeners as well, because a lot of us are going to be facing these hard things in life. And so it really helps to journey alongside people who face them well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I very much hope that this discussion has helped someone out there who is struggling with changing some obstacle in front of them into a manageable challenge. So thank you guys for listening. I think this was a great topic of discussion, and I'm looking forward to the next point, because it's another sub point to Dad's sub point of his talk on goal setting, and I love getting through it. So that's my closing thoughts on this episode. But I really enjoyed it, and thank you so much, Melody, for your awesome responses to my questions. I think that you gave a lot more clarity and confirmation and closure, and just some great examples for people to dig into until next week. So thank you very much, Melody.
Awesome. Well, thank you too. Thanks for being willing to be vulnerable about, everything that we went through with Dad. I think, and I hope that it makes a difference for people. And I just love being on this journey with you guys and continuing to revisit these teachings and mine out all the truths and the beauty. So we'll do it again next time.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us on this journey with the Reflections Cast. And remember that your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that like button, write us a review, or leave us a voicemail. And please share this episode with friends, family, or anyone you think might benefit from our discussion. We believe in you. We're committed to help you thrive on your journey of discovering all you were created to be. And until next time, keep reflecting, keep growing, and pass it on.